Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're so grateful to have you here at our podcast, Grassroots, called Oh for Dying Out Loud. I am so excited to be here. I am one of your hosts, Angie Cat. I am your magical life midwife. And joining me, as always, is the ever beautiful and divine death doula, Laura Shaw. Hi, friend.
Hello.
Oh, my goodness. So, we are going to continue our conversation about grief
Yes.
because there have been some interesting things that I'd love to get your perspective on
Okay.
and that have happened for me in the last couple of weeks that I just think, it just gives rise to the fact that, grief is just never a done topic. You know, we think it is, we want it to be because nobody likes to be in that grief space, but just talking about how it evolves and that kind of thing. So here's the first thing that came up. So as some of you may know, Laura certainly knows, back in January of this year, I lost my beloved cat, Toby, who was with me for 18 and a half years. He was the love of my life. And I did not think that grief could be any harder. It was so awful. I think I cried through the entire month of January. And even though I knew that at some point I was going to get cats, I thought it would be a while. It would be a while. So, I've been thinking about it and, working through some journaling and prompting and this kind of thing. And so I was telling my friend Laura here that there was a local animal shelter that recently put out a call to action because they were overrun with kitties and saying, please help. We will waive the adoption fees. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go down and this seems like a good nudge and I'm feeling in a good space because I could tell that I was in a good space because the thought of adopting cats did not make me dissolve into a puddle as it had months before. So I'm like, okay, maybe we're emotionally ready for this.
Right.
So I get down there, it's fabulous. It took all 5 minutes. I came home with two beautiful cats. But prior to going down there, because I took Friday off to do this because I had to drive a ways to go pick up the cats, and I didn't want to do it on Saturday because it would be a zoo, and I needed to have the emotional space to just kind of navigate through this and see what happens. So I called my friend and I was telling her what I was about to do and, just kind of talking through it. And she was so lovely. And she's like, I'm so excited for you. And I'm like, yeah, well, we'll see. And she said, I'm hearing some trepidation or some hesitation in your voice. What's going on with that? And I was like, that's a good call out. I don't know. And I sat with it for a minute and then it hit me like a brick. I had somewhere deep inside of me this idea that if I were to go adopt two new cats, that somehow the memory of Toby would leave me
Yeah.
and that I would be dishonoring that or that I wouldn't be able to have connection with him spiritually. And so, of course, I dissolved into tears because what a tender spot, but also that realization of, oh no, it never goes away. That memory never goes away. But I just wonder, how often do you as a death doula kind of hear that sort of theme that that's the resistance, is that we don't want the memory to die. We don't want to, I don't know, that's why they don't want to move through it, or they
Yeah.
don't through it as much.
Well, it's an interesting thing because it does come up a lot in families who are losing a loved one. Uh, Oftentimes spouses or partners feel the loss
Mm-hmm.
of this relationship. And you're right, it can sometimes feel to them like they are cheating or dishonoring the marriage, the vows, the love. So it's actually a relatively common theme that comes up a lot for people. And but on the flip side of that, and I'm sure you can speak to this too, one of the really interesting things is, as you say that, I think back to the vigils that I've sat or the people who I've worked with. And often the person who is dying doesn't want for their family or their partners not to move on.
Right.
So the person who's leaving is typically not, I mean, not always. Sometimes you get someone who's like, no, no. But
You're mine forever.
right, forever. But definitely there's this idea that the person who's leaving wants you to continue in this life, in this space, being happy. And you are correct in saying that that memory never goes away. It
Right.
just does. It just doesn't.
Right.
It can inform other relationships.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not an uncommon theme where people feel like it would be dishonoring
Right.
or a disservice to their loved one or to
Right.
their family member, to really kind of move on in a way. And I challenge that with well, is it really moving on? Because it doesn't change. Like it having your sweet baby kitties, Storm and Sky, I'm assuming it hasn't changed your feelings about Toby.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I've there's a couple times I've slipped and called Sky Toby, and it's like, oh, So I know that he's still with me, and then quite frankly, I think Toby helped me to pick them out, and brought them to me, and he helped me, and he's still around. In fact, when they're tearing up the house, I just say a little prayer, Toby, Cinnamon, could you please just come down here and help him to get the lay of the land? So I'm glad that you said that, because I think it's not just that we don't want to, we want to make sure that we're honoring that memory. The memory never goes away, but also there was that feeling of, oh, I'm not ready to let go. Right. And I think there's a difference in the way that we might describe that, because I came to understand, and as you're saying, it's not moving on, it's not letting go. You're then creating a space where the two can coexist, right? This
Yes.
beautiful memory of your loved one, your pet, your spouse, whatever, can coexist with new love.
Right.
That there's only so much space, right? There's so much space in this little heart, and only one being can occupy at one time. And that's what the revelation is that no, grief, actually, I don't know, this is something that I'm experiencing right now, is it sort of feels like, wow, my grief has kind of cracked it open so that there's an even bigger space to hold all of it. The
All of
grief,
it.
yeah, all of it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. My grandmother actually had this really great thought about this. So she once described to me, she'd been married 3 times, and the first one was not good. They had many children, very rough marriage. Anyway, ended in divorce, which was unheard of in her time. And then she married what she would describe to me as the love of her life, which is my biological grandfather, who died before I was born, while my mom was pregnant with me. And my grandmother said that truly in her lifetime, she was passionately in love with him. And after he passed, she ended up marrying a family friend who had known my grandfather. And that's the grandpa that I knew growing up. And she said that he was the true companion of her life. So yeah, and she explained to me that she wouldn't have given up the great passionate love that she had with my grandfather. But that didn't discount the companionship that she and my grandfather, my grandpa Herman, shared with each other. And so she truly, I think from that point, really made, like, it didn't replace, it just created new. So she never stopped loving my grandpa Marcy, but she still had this really amazing, in her words, this amazing companionable life with my grandpa Herman, for the rest of her life. So yeah, I think that that's true.
I love that she was able to sort of give them different terms, if you will. Like, it just sort of speaks to the idea that there's so many flavors. Like, I think, thank you, Hollywood, we get indoctrinated into this idea that there's only one true love, and that's not true. I mean, the one true love is divine source, right? And we're all a part of that.
Right.
And if you've ever read Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, that is an amazing book. The first book, especially, really kind of drop kicked me into my spiritual path. It's fabulous. But he talks about that if we look at everybody, every being, as an energy being, and when you have that connection with that energy being, it's amazing. But that you're going to have that sort of connection with lots of people. There's going to be that amazing friendship. There's going to be that amazing companion, that amazing pet, or several of them in my case. And, there's just going to be that electricity. And so it doesn't have to be true love or soulmate, that actually everybody is your soulmate. It's just a different flavor. So I love that she said, here's my, passionate true love, and here was my true companion. I love that.
Yeah.
That's a great way of describing it. Yeah. So that's very interesting. Yeah. So that was something that was interesting as I'm, navigating, getting settled with my beloved cats. They're all sleeping now because they're drugged up on food. So they're doing great. But I think I was telling you before we started the call that one of the things that was interesting to me is I forgot how much joy this type of love brings me. And I didn't realize how, my life is amazing. I am so blessed, I'm blessed that I have a lot of great friends and a wonderful family. And so my cup is full, but I realized, I really loved having them in the house. I loved having that love, that energy in the house. It's no longer stagnant. It's no longer, and I'm not talking to Ben and Jerry's on a regular basis about my feelings of loneliness. So that has helped on the waistline as well. So so yeah, it's really been interesting. But I just thought that was such a revelation to me, that was the hang up initially, was that, I'm not ready to let go of the memory of Toby. And when I finally realized, you're never going to let go of that memory. That's silly. And then it was like, I can have them both. It's like, I get to have cake and pie. Yay! So that was really interesting. And kind of piggybacking on that is segueing, grief in another form. So, my grandfather had passed, my last living grandparent passed just a couple days before Christmas of last year. And so it's been a long drawn out process to take care of the estate. And just recently, probably 2 weeks ago, the family home sold. And this is, I'm on Zillow, and I'm looking at all the pictures, and I'm crying because I remember where the Christmas tree used to be and where the piano used to be, and all the, the old TV, the old tube TV was still there. Nobody wanted it. And I was like, we used to watch Lawrence Welk on that TV, and hee-haw.
Yeah. And hee-haw.
And hee-haw, right? So all of these memories flooded up, and it was again very interesting because I just wanted to point out too that if you're looking for a legacy project, this is what my aunt gifted to me. This bear is made from one of my grandfather's shirts. Isn't that so cool?
It's so beautiful.
It's beautiful. And as soon as it arrived, I'm like, I remember this shirt. I've seen him wear this shirt, right? So in processing all of that, I I called my parents and I talked to my mom and see how she was doing. And of course, expectedly, she's awash in her grief, and
Mhm.
she had said, she said, it's, there's a lot of feelings around it. This is my childhood home. I spent a lot of years there. That us kids, we spent a lot of years there, and that's where all of our summers were spent. And she said to me, she said, it's like my mom died all over again. So she said, it's dredging this up. And she said, I just feel like I've been grieving for so many years. And she said, you feel like you're getting back to normal, and then a wave hits you. And she said, I just kind of want it to be done. And I had to bite my tongue because I was like, oh, mom, I'm sorry, but it's never done, right? Because so I wanted us to talk a little bit about that, because I think, again, it's kind of that cultural norm where it's like, well, you get 2 days off to deal with your grief, your 2 days of bereavement leave, and somehow you're supposed to go back to your life and function as
Mhm.
before. And there's this, I think it just contributes to that idea of, at some point, this is going to go away and I will not feel this. And you and I talked to a lot of people in our death cafes about the fact that so many people are like, man, it's been 15 years. And if I think about it, I will be brought to tears.
Yeah.
So, talk to us a little bit about your thoughts around that, your experiences, things that can help people navigate that, knowing full well that you're in the little dinghy and you're going to ride those waves.
You are. You are going to
Right.
ride the waves. Well, first of all, I think it's important to recognize that it's not linear. So I could be doing something in my everyday life that is absolutely mundane and regular, and then suddenly a song or a something will happen, and all of a sudden, whoosh, I'm right back to a different space or time or human being, or I'll smell something and it will remind me of sometimes when I go to I like to thrift. Here's a little
I know
known
you
fact about
do.
me. I love thrifting.
Mhm.
And sometimes when thrifting, I will run across a shirt that I would swear my grandmother probably owned at one point.
Right.
With it's the sweatshirt that someone sewed a collar onto and bedazzled and bejeweled the front of. Uh,
Bedazzling.
so good, so good.
Yes.
Um, and so it's not linear. So first of all, give yourself space. So one of the things I think helps the most, or at least that I have found helpful in my life and in the people around me, is remembering, first of all, that when I see those bedazzled, crazy sweatshirts,
Mhm.
I get such a kick out of it to remember my grandmother. So rather than where it might have once taken me to a really sad place of missing, instead it takes me a really joyful place of love, and just
Mhm.
remembering that there's signs everywhere reminding me that our ancestors are still here with us. So that's,
Yeah.
I think remembering that is so important.
Right.
Another thing that I think is important, and maybe more true now than ever and less common, is
Mm.
that we don't keep our loved ones alive as much as
Yes.
we used to.
Mhm.
So in my family, we talk about dead people as if they're still around sometimes.
Yes.
And
Why
um
not?
like I did not know my grandpa Marcy. He died, like I said, when my mom was pregnant with me, but I can tell you a lot about him: the good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful, the funny, uh because my parents just were always really good about keeping the stories and the conversations about it. And so I find that if we shy away from keeping them alive,
Mhm.
then when it pops up, it startles us.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's
As opposed to just like, oh, well, there's grandma's sweatshirt, and how, like, I'll take a picture and send it, like, here's clearly someone has turned in one of grandma's old sweatshirts again, because, and then everyone will giggle because it's just true. We all know it
right.
with her. Um Yeah, so I think partially it's just reminding ourselves that it doesn't have to be a devastatingly sad moment, but instead a joyful embrace
Right. Right.
from
Well,
that.
yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. I mean, that's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about that, that the more we try to resist it or block it out, then it just hits us so much harder than
Yeah,
if we just kind of continue to um well, first of all, we know that the spirit world is right here.
right.
So the truth is that they are here with us,
Mhm.
and every time they pop into our memory, that is like them showing up. And it is like them communicating with them, which I want to talk about here in a minute too. So I think that that's really a valid point, that the more, and I think it's part of the process too. If we allow
Right,
that to be part of the process, then the grief can be a living, evolving thing rather than let's shove it in this box and then hope to God somebody doesn't trip over it and it springs open and
right.
all of this stuff
Yes.
comes out, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Well,
sure.
and we first of all be gentle with
Right.
yourselves. So, if you've experienced a really tragic loss,
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, any loss really, then just allow yourself the time you need and the space you need. You needed time after Toby. No one, I don't
Yeah.
think, would have thought that you should have gone out the next day and gotten kitties
Oh,
and that
well,
they would
what's
just fill the
interesting?
void.
It's interesting you say that because I had people that were messaging me on Facebook with pictures of kitties going, oh,
Oh,
there's one right here that needs an adoption. And I got really pissy with them. And I was
of
like,
course.
I am not ready. And I need you to understand that. Do not send me pictures right now.
Right.
So, absolutely, when it is really a raw and gaping wound,
Hmm.
for sure, you got to be gentle and you have to set those boundaries.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely have to set those boundaries around your time, around your energy, around the way that you process it. Because how many times have you and I encountered in our death cafe people who come specifically for the fact that none of their family members want to talk about the dead,
Right.
and they tell them you got to get over it.
Right, get over it. I'm sorry, get over the fact that this amazing human being or this amazing energy exists in the world and I miss them daily.
Right.
Um, or I could just celebrate them every day.
Right. Exactly. Well, and you're nurturing that relationship, right?
Mhm.
All relationship is an investment in energy.
Yeah.
And so if you are, just like with friendship, if you're investing time and energy into it, it grows. If you're investing time in journaling, I'm a big fan of journaling. Journal and write them a love letter every day.
Yes. Every
Then
day.
what you'll notice is that they'll start to communicate with you. My grandfather must have known that I was going to talk about him tonight because that dove came back and sat on
Oh,
my deck again. And so, that sort of thing starts to happen more often when you cultivate that relationship. And again, I just think it takes your relationship to another level.
yeah.
Even though they're not here in physical body, you can still have a relationship with them,
Mhm.
for
So
sure.
I guess the unfortunate news for your mom is
Mhm.
that I'm sorry, friend, that it's not going to go away. But the good news is that if you just reframe that
Yeah.
instead of re-experiencing grief over and over again, although first of all, I hope mom is gentle with herself because the selling of a family home is
Huge.
huge. Like, even if nobody has died, like this
Right?
happens in families when kids grow up and mom and dad are like, man, we're going to sell the house because we don't need this much space. And kids are devastated. And,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, let's
It's a
be
life
gentle.
change.
Right. Let's
Yeah.
be gentle a little bit,
Yeah.
but then
It's a
let's
major life
reframe.
transition, which in
Right.
itself is like a loss.
It is a huge loss.
Grieve.
Yes,
Yes.
grieve away. And then celebrate all the amazing experiences and wonderful moments and ridiculous stories and
Right.
all the nutty, zany things that people did in that space as a family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the fact that my brother and sister, there was a back room in the house that was kind of like the sunroom where all the plants were, and they had a wood burning stove, and there was a back stairway that went down into the basement into, and it would split off to go to grandma's ceramic room and grandpa's workshop. And I don't know why. This should tell you everything you need to know about me and my siblings. But we would, it was carpeted stairs. We would slide down those stairs. We would slide down the stairs. That was our favorite game when we were little, to the point where we would slide down on our butts, and we would slide down on our bellies, you know, and we'd go to take a bath, and mom's like, what is this rug burn on your belly? Yeah. Well, you know, this is what we do. So, I mean, those are funny memories that bring up joy, because in that environment, you know. So yeah, so there you go. That's it. Example, exhibit A.
Exhibit A.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, and I agree with you. I mean, I think that we're by no means saying here's how you know, navigate it. Everybody's going to be different, but you know, we've navigated you know, our own experiences. We've helped other people navigate them, and have kind of patterns of how it looks, and some things that can help. Again, journaling, being gentle with yourself. There are grief counselors. Talk to a grief counselor. Talk about it. You know, I mean, one of the best things that I think allowed me to be ready for adopting new kitties was that book that I had referenced in a previous episode, the Griffin's Heart Journal.
Which is
and
so
I
beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad you guys are enjoying it. It's very helpful because it was all about reminiscing, and tell us about your pet, and put your pictures in there, and how did they make you feel, and what were some of the quirks and everything. And so I think that journaling helped me to process through it, so that I could stop focusing on the bad stuff, which was he wasn't here, you know, and the last day, you know, and I could focus on, what nearly 20 years of bliss with this animal, you know. So it's going to take time. Everybody's going to be a little different, but give that, just like with any other emotion. Emotion is energy in motion, but it's got to be in motion. You've got to move your body. You've got to move it through your voice, talk about it, write about it. It's got to be moved, because otherwise it will stagnate in your body. And that's where you will find difficulties. That's where you can get into depression. That's where you can get illnesses, honestly, is when we keep all of our emotions locked down, and we don't have an outlet for them in some way, shape, or form. Prairie Woods does these, which is a spirituality center here in Iowa, fabulous place. Lots of workshops, and they have routinely, I think it's once a month, they have like a grief art workshop, where every month they pick a different art project, and it's a way to talk through and process the grief. So yeah.
When my friend Jennifer passed, I joined a support group for suicide, for survivors of suicide. So essentially it was this room, and I never felt worthy, because it was typically moms, dads, wives, you know, spouses, whatever. And this is just a dear friend of mine. However, it was so helpful. It was so, at first it was a little bit like an AA meeting, and I will never say, like, I absolutely support groups are amazing. So we would go in and we would sit down, and it was, you know, the traditional, hi, my name is Laura, my friend Jen ended her life, and this is how she chose to do it. We always said how they ended their life, and I never understood that. So finally one day I'm like, why do we do that? And it was to destigmatize the act, because essentially we were trying to get over the shame that we may feel, because there's such a stigma around someone ending their own lives. And anyway, so yeah, it was this crazy, and I went to that group for, I don't know, quite some time. And it was so amazingly helpful. It was so absolutely critical in my ability to like process through. We
Right.
shared a therapist. So
Oh,
when
good.
Jen's life ended, my
Mhm.
therapist left for a while because she had lost her patient. And so
Mhm.
I lost my therapist at the
Oh,
same time.
wow. Yeah.
But which I get, she needed to do that for her own self. And
Right.
luckily, fortunately for all of us who have Alex, thank you for being an amazing counselor. I don't see her anymore. Oddly enough, she says, I'm all better. This is good and healthy me. Uh, so she, not many therapists come back from losing patients like that. And she did because she took the time that she needed. But I think a critical piece for me was going to a support group. So can't say enough about it. Find a
Yeah.
support group, find your tribe,
Yes.
go to whatever random group of human beings you have to go to, and keep
Right.
talking about it, because you're right, it is in motion. It's
Right.
emotion in motion that is so
Yes.
helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And kind of one of the last things I wanted to piggyback on this too is that this was a conversation that came up in one of the moon circles that we had this last
Mhm.
week. Um, we weren't necessarily talking about the dead. We were talking about communicating with those who have transitioned. And what was interesting is that from the retreat, also, I kind of got a greater sense of how they might communicate, because one of the frustrations is that um, we think that if we do believe, and I hope you do, that they're communicating with us in a variety of different ways, and the more that we sort of practice that, whether it's journaling or talking out loud to them, however you want to do it, the more you invest in that relationship, the more communications that you get. But people get frustrated because they're like, well, I want to see them with my eyes, or I want to hear them, or I want to, feel them, or whatever. Like, or they're expecting that the sign is going to show up in a certain way. And I wanted to touch on this because there was a great story shared by this woman at this retreat, who she was asking Radley Valentine. She said, my friend died by suicide, and or no, not died by suicide, they excuse me, they had cancer and
Mm.
a terminal illness. And so they had this conversation beforehand and had agreed that, okay, these are the signs that I'm going to give you. There's something around nickels, and so this gentleman said, I'm going to send you nickels, and that's how you'll know it's me. And so this girl was asking Rally, she's like, I never see nickels. It's been, how people say, oh, I found a penny on the street, it's the angels are talking to me, or my loved ones are talking to me. They gave me pennies. Right. And she says, I never see nickels. And she said, and it's been over a year and I'm just distraught about it. And he finally was talking to her about it, and he had this epiphany. He said, wait a minute. He said, what are your intuitive skills like? Are you clairaudient? She says, no, I'm claircognizant, which means I have a knowing, and I'm clairvoyant, meaning that I see in my mind's eye, right? So he said, did you ever consider that every single time you think about a nickel, that is him communicating to you and sending you a nickel? And so she was like, what? Like her mind was blown, And so I think that that's an important piece of why we want to cultivate those memories, because when they pop up like that, that is a form of communication. It's almost like they're saying, oh, hey, do you remember when? Do you remember us when we did this? Do you remember this memory that we shared? And I just thought that that was so brilliant to help her to understand that it's not always going to be a cardinal sitting in your tree. It's not always going to be pennies on the ground, but pay attention. And if you want that kind of communication and that nurturance of that communication, be on the lookout for it, that it'll show up in a variety of different ways. I mean,
Right.
doves, or butterflies. Every time I see butterflies, that's my grandmother. If I smell roses, that's my other grandmother. The lights, the flickering lights, always Grandpa Joe, because
Always.
he's a trickster. Yeah. So, so that's, I think, another reason why it's important for us to not to keep that memory alive, to keep them alive, because in essence they are still alive. They just let their body go,
Mhm.
and however it happened. And I get that there may be some attachment to the traumatic way that it left, but their spirit now, and they are free, and they are here, and they are always with you. You have the amazing ability to keep that relationship alive. And so I encourage you to do that. I mean, every time I see this bear, I'm like, I hear Benny Goodman in my head because he loved big band music. So it's a great way to keep that memory and that communication and that relationship alive.
I love that.
So
I love
yeah.
that. Yeah, I think it's important uh that you shared that message about the nickels, because I think we always try to find some big, like we have this expectation in our heads of what it will be like. Like there will be a billboard with your face in front of me that will smack me upside
Right.
the head, or whatever. And
Right.
I'm sure I've shared before, I dream about people who have passed.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
ones I don't know, and it's very upsetting because like I don't even know this guy. Why is he talking to me?
Right.
Okay, it's fine. Go ahead, talk to me. Keep
Yeah.
talking.
What do you gotta say?
Yeah, but I had not heard, same friend Jennifer. I had not ever dreamt about her. I was so mad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been nearly a decade, which is unbelievable in and of itself.
Right.
And I never, it's like, no, but I never, like, that's the one. I never hear, never, no, nothing, no, never. But there's all these other little things. A song will hit me, or a something else, just weird things will hit me and remind me of her. And then I just finally, these conversations have always helped me, because I think I've just relaxed enough. I actually dreamt and I got to see her in dream, just before my trip to Las Vegas. So it was so lovely. Right.
Did you walk up to her and go, "Where have you
Where
been?"
have you been? I think I no, I was just like, oh, it's like not a day had been missed, just like it is. But
Right.
you're right. It's not always the things that I would expect.
Yeah.
I don't, when I see the crazy sweatshirts of my grandmother, or I'll see someone walking in the grocery store who is wearing the same kind of sass shoes she wore, or whatever,
Right. Right.
and it'll just be enough to be like,
Right.
oh, hey grandma,
Yeah.
how are you doing? um
Yeah.
it's so lovely. I love that it really is. I think sometimes when we're waiting to be smacked upside the head by a cricket bat, uh
Yeah.
it occurs to me like, oh, they were there jumping up and down
Right.
before.
They're like, over here, over here. Yeah. Well, and it just, what dropped into my head. What was the name of that Robin Williams movie where I believe he died in a car accident? And so he's navigating heaven. What was the name of that movie?
Oh, I
Oh,
don't remember this.
you don't remember it at all? You don't know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, I will find out and I will post it in the comments and I'll
Oh, I
let you
can't
know. But
wait.
so there's a movie where Robin Williams had died in a car accident, and he is, navigating the spirit world essentially.
Oh,
And one of the interesting things is that he ends up having a conversation with this young man, an African American man, and turns out that it's his son who had
oh,
passed previously, and they had this amazing conversation. And so it just reminded me that it's like, eh, for example, when I was on retreat, I had a fabulous meditation where my grandmother came to me, but she appeared like a wizard. She had long white hair and white beard and white flowing robes. And then this young kid pushed her out of the way and said, "Get out of the way. I'm so excited to see her." And it was a little boy, but I knew in my body, claircognizance, that was Toby.
Oh,
coming to run up and meet me because of that energy, right? So I
right.
guess what I'm saying is that that just is again more evidence to the fact that in the spirit world anything's possible, right? And so they can go, watch this, I'm going to show up as a peacock in her dream, you know. They have the capacity to show up in a variety of ways. So our human brain in this incarnation is so limited
Mhm.
oftentimes to what we can perceive. And
Right.
so if you can get into the habit of, you know, suspending that belief,
Mhm.
suspending that judgment of how they're supposed to show up, how they're supposed to communicate with you, and trust that, like, just instead of going, why aren't they communicating with me? Wake up in the morning and go, oh, I can't wait to find out how they're going to communicate with me today.
Right.
And watch how you're delighted because, and don't question it. You know, if you see something that catches your eye, like the most beautiful butterfly that you've never seen before, that clearly never comes to visit, is it your grandma? Probably, right?
Also, just
Yeah.
accept it. Accept that it
Just
is.
accept it. It's a gift,
Yep.
right? Because, and why? Because you just thought of your grandmother when you saw this.
Hmm.
So, yes, if it prompts you to think of that person, yes,
Right. And how
absolutely.
beautiful is
So,
that? I will
right?
spend, if I could spend every day for the rest of my life, finding the beautiful nickels that don't look like nickels that help me
Yes.
remember whoever,
Yeah.
all of my loved ones and ancestors and friends that have gone before me, then what an amazing life that is.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the magic of it. Spirit is everywhere. It is in everything. So let's remember that your loved ones are a part of that now, and
Mhm.
they too can show up as just about everything.
Right.
So that's lovely. That's a fabulous note to end on,
Mhm.
and I'm glad that we're continuing to talk about this because it's been a really fabulous and interesting and hard and challenging and enlightening journey to navigate grief in a variety of different ways. And as I get older, there's going to be more of that,
Yep.
you know, friends, family members, um, all of those things. And um, I'm, I would also like to just put out there, I haven't read it yet, but I'm super excited. I did buy the book. Chris Carr, she is the crazy, sexy cancer author. She wrote the book Crazy Sexy Cancer
Mhm.
and survived cancer. She's fabulous plant-based eater. She wrote a book called I'm Not a Morning Person, meaning morning, MOUR. And it's all about navigating loss of all different kinds. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking that we'll have to maybe do some reading into that and diving into some of those topics because like we talked about in one of our earliest episodes, it's not just people or pets leaving this incarnation.
Yep.
It is about the family home that we're selling
Yep.
or the job that we're leaving or the city that we're leaving. Oh my God. When I left here the first time and moved to Florida, I stood at the kitchen sink of our Florida apartment and sobbed because I did not want to leave. So, I mean, how do we navigate that? Mourning is part of who we are as a
Yep.
human species,
Yes.
and it is an integral part of living a magical life.
Mhm.
So, mm. So with that, my friends, we hope that you're not mourning too much today, but if you are, we send you much love and blessings on your way.
Mhm.
Thank you for being here in our podcast. Thank you, Laura, for
Yes.
always sharing your
Mhm.
wisdom. Really appreciate it. And we will see you in a couple weeks with another brand new episode. If you've got questions, you've got some topics you want to talk about, drop them in the comments below. We'd love to see those. And oh, for dying out loud, we hope you live a beautiful day and the rest of your week. So we'll see you again soon.
Bye, friends.
Bye.